Picture this. You're on holiday, you walk up to the front desk to pay your hotel bill, and your card just dies. No error message that makes sense. No overdraft, no fraud alert. Your money is still sitting in your bank account back home, but the plastic in your hand is now worthless because two companies headquartered thousands of miles away decided overnight that people like you no longer get to use their network. Sounds like a nightmare scenario, right? It already happened. 2 million of people. In 2022, on January 21, 2026, moments after European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen addressed the European Parliament, Committee Chair Aurore Lamperriere took the podium to deliver a warning. The daily commerce of European citizens, she stated, relies entirely on financial rails owned and regulated in the United States. If political winds in Washington shift, access to those networks could be cut almost instantly. To address this, Lamperriere called for an emergency Brussels summit to build a European-owned alternative, drawing a direct parallel to how European nations established Airbus to challenge the aviation monopoly of Boeing. Her address reframed payment networks from everyday conveniences into critical infrastructure. In an era of geopolitical division, relying on foreign payment systems represents a systemic vulnerability. In 1988, during the final years of the Cold War, Visa and Mastercard negotiated payment licenses with the Soviet Ministry of Finance and the state bank, Gazbank. These networks arrived as simple consumer conveniences, allowing state retail outlets to capture foreign hard currency. On September 21, 1991, a senior Sberbank officer named Igor Lobanov walked into the Kalinka-Stockman department store in Moscow to make a purchase. He used the first Visa card issued to an ordinary Soviet citizen to buy a case of imported beer and a pack of Marlboro cigarettes. This quiet expansion proceeded despite active regulatory barriers. Between 1987 and 1989, the U.S. Office of Foreign Assets Control administered sanctions under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, which held the legal authority to block American financial services from expanding into rival nations. Yet, regulators chose not to apply these tools to the card networks, allowing them to scale up without restriction. Why Washington allowed this underlying infrastructure to quietly embed itself within a major geopolitical adversary remains an unresolved policy question. In a May 12, 2024 Brookings Institution study, former US Treasury economist Aaron Klein argued that this financial integration was a deliberate strategy rather than a historical oversight. His research outlines how foreign access to American payment networks is designed to establish state power over decades. The process operates in 4 distinct stages. It begins with the on-ramp, introducing convenient payment cards to a foreign market. This rapidly builds systemic dependency as citizens adopt the technology for daily commerce. Once a host nation relies entirely on these networks to buy goods and services, that dependency is converted into strategic leverage. The final step is coercion, where the threat of disabling the payment rails serves as a potent, non-military weapon. Under this framework, global payment networks are not neutral commercial utilities, but premeditated tools of geopolitical pressure. On March 5, 2022, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky delivered a virtual address to a joint session of the U.S. Congress. Alongside requests for fighter jets, Zelensky appealed directly for financial intervention, calling on lawmakers to pressure Visa and Mastercard to suspend their operations in the Russian Federation. Representative Brad Sherman later recalled the urgency of the request, noting that Zelensky explicitly asked Congress to leverage the 2 dominant card networks to deprive Russia of the foreign exchange channels funding its operations. The corporate response was swift. At 9:12 UTC that same day, Visa published a corporate statement announcing the immediate suspension of all transaction processing for Russian banks. Just 16 minutes later, at 9:28 UTC, Mastercard issued a nearly identical announcement. This dual move deactivated the primary financial plumbing of a major global economy. Over 25 years, Russia had built a deep reliance on these Western networks. Out of a population of 140 million people holding approximately 300 million active payment cards, Mastercard controlled 38% of the market, while Visa held 35%. Overnight, more than 73% of the nation's transaction infrastructure was severed from the global network, sparking immediate ruble devaluations and market panic. The fallout quickly crossed international borders, catching ordinary citizens in the crossfire. Thousands of Russian tourists vacationing abroad suddenly found their plastic cards useless. In Thailand, a premier destination hosting a massive volume of Russian visitors, travelers were stranded at hotel desks and airport counters, unable to pay for lodging or return flights. To manage the sudden crisis, the Tourism Authority of Thailand stepped in, directing local hotels to slash room rates by 30% and granting automatic 30-day visa extensions to those trapped by the sudden digital blockade. In March 2014, following the annexation of Crimea, the United States imposed sanctions on Bank Russia and SMP Bank. Within hours, Visa and Mastercard cut off transaction processing for these institutions, leaving their customers instantly unable to use their cards. Moscow quickly realized that its entire domestic economy was vulnerable to foreign boardrooms. In May 2014, the state enacted federal law No. 112 FZ, establishing the National Payment Card System, known as NSPK, and a domestic card brand called Mir. Under the new law, foreign networks faced an ultimatum. They had to route all domestic transactions through NSPK's Russian servers, or post a massive $100 million cash guarantee with the central bank. Both Visa and Mastercard agreed to route locally. This technical redesign completely decoupled domestic payments from external networks. When a Russian consumer used a card within the country, the transaction cleared entirely inside domestic infrastructure. This insulation strategy explains why the dramatic 2022 withdrawal did not collapse Russia's internal commerce. While the exit stranded travelers abroad, daily retail transactions inside the country continued uninterrupted, neutralizing the strategic leverage Washington expected to wield. Europe operates without such a safety net. 13 of 19 Eurozone nations possess zero domestic backup payment systems, having replaced their national card networks with international alternatives. This reliance integrates Europe into a vast corporate duopoly. By 2025, Visa managed 5 billion cards, processing 329 billion transactions valued at $17 trillion. Mastercard supported 3.7 billion cards, handling 175 billion transactions worth over $10 trillion. Together, these two American companies control roughly 90% of the global market outside China. Donald Trump's return to office and his critical comments about the European Union have accelerated a security reckoning. ECB President Christine Lagarde and Chief Economist Philip Lane warned that this infrastructure dependency represents a strategic vulnerability. A November 2025 parliamentary report, European Strategic Autonomy and Cross-Border Payment Risk in an Era of Deglobalization, formalized this reality, framing corporate payment networks as a national security issue. The European Central Bank's response is the digital euro, a sovereign payment system issued directly by the central bank. Operated through standard digital wallets, this infrastructure bypasses Visa and Mastercard entirely. On July 14, 2026, the European Central Bank selected 36 financial providers, including Deutsche Bank, to build the network. A one-year pilot phase will launch in the second half of 2027. If the European Parliament passes the supporting laws by late 2028, a full public rollout is projected for 2029. This initiative is designed for strategic autonomy, establishing financial sovereignty rather than offering a commercial upgrade. Today, Europe's push for financial sovereignty is about survival. In a fragmented world, true independence is no longer just about defending physical borders. It means controlling the invisible rails that power your economy. What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments below.